Okay, so my topic is MNT with case-based counseling in childhood obesity. And so in the last 2 years, especially in the pandemic, we have really seen a sharp rise in number of children with obesity, and it's really obese kids, and parents are only coming now to us because they are doctors, they're pediatricians. I have now understood that this is a problem, and then these parents have been going to the doctors now, and that is when they're being directed to us. And I'm just going to share with you this case. 16-year-old girl, 96 kilos, working parents, nuclear family. Again, because of online school, waking up late, no breakfast, sorry. Yeah. And again, even when she goes to school, no habit of eating breakfast because they're very early. Mid-morning is either in the canteen, evening snack again. When we try to take the dietary recall because she has a maid at home, but it's constantly eating either packaged foods or ordering food from outside. And again, if the dinner is not tasty, it is ordering food from outside. And physical activity is almost nil. And if you look at her reports, hyperinsulinemia, dyslipidemia, PCOS, and low hemoglobin. And this is what we are seeing increasingly in girls today. And every second girl that walks into our clinic has PCOS. Hypothyroidism is on the rise, and hyperinsulinemia with pre-diabetes. In fact, even diabetes, when I started my practice, we really did not see so many children. I mean, honestly, I did not see any children with diabetes. We used to see people with diabetes after the age of 60, 65. But today, when I get a child referred to me with diabetes, I in fact look at the reports, I look at the investigations, because there are so many of them who have actually got type 2 diabetes or have hyperinsulinemia or pre-diabetes. And the youngest child that we have with type 2 diabetes in our clinic is 6 years old. So it is not uncommon today to see, one is definitely children with obesity, but also with type 2 diabetes. Now, if you look at the numbers, yes, we have the highest number of, obese children in the world after China. It's also maybe because of our numbers. And the Mark study had clearly shown, that 23% of our children in the age group of 5 to 14 years in urban schools were overweight, whereas 11% were obese. And what I want to draw to your attention is we did a recent study in the city of Mumbai where we screened, young adults and adolescents in the age group of 16 to 25 years. And what we observed was 15% of children were overweight and 20.5% were obese. And this is definitely alarming. We also saw a very high incidence of, anemia, especially in the girls, and hyperinsulinemia as well. And if you look at, the lifestyle today, the kind of food portions, I think ordering in has become very, very common, even if the children don't go out. And that was even evident in the pandemic area. In fact, it became an addiction. We've got kids who actually have no contact delivery, and they ask the delivery person to deliver the food at the gate, or they bring the food and they eat it in the bathroom because they're addicted to eating outside food. And, a lot of unhealthy food in the bargain is being consumed, sugar sweetened beverages. Physical activity has gone down. I remember as children, we used to actually wait to go down to play at 5 o'clock in the evening. But today you have to really force the kids to go down to the play. And even when we try and understand, from parents about the children, they say the children go down to play, but they're actually on their gadgets and they're not really expending calories. And this has become a scenario which has become very common in all households. Increased screen time, and again increased intake of high calorie foods, and therefore an obesogenic environment, I would say a diabesogenic environment. And this is something that we all really need to try and work on, especially as dietitians, as nutritionists. It's very, very important to try and highlight these points to the parents. And I always tell the parents, that you need to be good role models. Children are not going to follow your advice. They will follow your steps. So you be the right role model. There's no point you being slouching on the bed or watching TV when you're eating your food and expecting the children to behave themselves. It's not possible. So I think very important is it should be a family thing, and the entire family needs to be counseled. Also about, food and canteens. We see, though there are a lot of nutritionists now being employed by schools and, as consultants, we still see that the canteen food is not really healthy. And children often like to eat that food, but it's very high in fat, especially your saturated fat, sodium, as well as your unhealthy carbs. This was an interesting survey that was done in Delhi, in which they screened 13,200 children in the age group of 9 to 14 years. And what they saw is that 93% of children ate packaged foods and 68% had sugar-sweetened beverages. And yes, the consumption of, all your packaged foods, whether it's biscuits or whether it's breads, whether it's your bakery products, is definitely high, along with sugar-sweetened beverages. It's also because parents are going to work, and even for a woman today, it's not really easy to sit and make snacks separately, and as a result of which children then eat their mid-morning or their mid-evening snack, which could be out of pockets. Either it'll be a sandwich, or it'll be a biscuit, or it'll be noodles, which is definitely going to be detrimental to their health. Now, lockdown has definitely had an impact, I think, which we've all seen in our clinic. What the survey said was that 2,000 children between the age of 3 and 15 years in the tertiary care hospital all reported weight gain. In fact, that day I went to one of the shops to buy my son something. And in fact, even the shop, the salesperson was telling me that now, the clothes are not fitting the kids. After 2 years, now parents are coming because none of the clothes are fitting the kids, and the children have become really obese. And this is a situation that we are seeing, I think, globally. Calorie intake has definitely gone up. I think, again, in the pandemic time, mothers were at home, so they donned their chef caps. And in fact, there was a very interesting survey that was done that the highest ingredient that was sold during the pandemic period was actually the baking ingredients. So your baking powder, baking soda, maida was the highest sold ingredient during the pandemic period. And I think everybody, including me, baked breads and cakes at home, and children have definitely been impacted. And while we're talking about, yes, the environment, we're also looking at genetic, epigenetic, and there's a struggle between nurture and nature. So it's very important that, yes, the obesogenic environment, we Indians with our ethnicity and with our genetic predisposition, I think this is only driving us towards obesity further. And everybody knows about the Barker's hypothesis and the fetal programming. And today we're talking about the 1,000 days of life, which is so, so important, right from, the woman when she's pregnant to the child being 2 years of age. This is the most crucial phase in a woman's life as well as the child's life, which actually determines what is going to be the future of this child. Now, when we're looking at management strategies, and when I've reviewed literature, one is definitely we're looking at behavior change. So behavior modification is very key. I think today's times, this is the most important thing. Definitely healthy eating, physical activity, sleep habits, because again, we are seeing, in fact, every time I'm consulting children, and when I ask the parents, when do the children sleep? The children are only sleeping at 12:30 and 1, sometimes even 4 in the morning. And there is no time of waking up. And they're either binging on Netflix, and as a result of which they're actually eating late. And a lot of food that is eaten in the late hours is very, very unhealthy, because that is, again, packaged foods, or they're ordering in food from outside. So weight control is definitely essential. Self-motivation is necessary. And I think with kids, that is what we see. In fact, I recently had a child who came to us. And in fact, the child asked the mother that she wants to see a dietitian. The reason was she was 38 kgs, 10 years old. And now in the last 2 years, she's actually gained so much of weight that now she's 82 kgs for a height of 145 centimeters. School is beginning. And now with, with going to school, she's actually feeling embarrassed that the other kids are going to make fun of her, and she's really concerned about it. And that is why she asked her mother to consult a dietitian, and she's come to us, and we see that she's highly motivated to lose weight, is because now she's wondering what is going to happen when she goes to school. So there's going to be a lot of self-esteem issues as well, and therefore working with a psychologist becomes extremely important. If we can't handle it, I think it's very important that we refer them to a child psychologist. Again, when we're looking at weight loss, remember they are in their growth phase. We cannot really go very, very crash, especially a lot of, today there's so much of, with available information on social media, on WhatsApp, etc. And parents usually resort to that. But when it comes to kids, definitely nothing which is extreme, no crash diets, no fat diets, no diets which eliminate any food group, because they are in the most important phase of their life. I, in fact, tell all the parents that this is where you're plowing, you're planting a seed, and you're waiting for a good, yield in terms of a tree and then fruit. So today what you sow is what you're going to reap in the future. So it's very important that you take the right decision for your children so that they can enjoy a healthy future. An interdisciplinary approach is very important, especially when it comes to kids. And I'm going to highlight a few points in the slides to follow. So physician, a dietitian, a mental health provider, and an exercise psychologist. Because when you're dealing with children with childhood obesity, you should also be concerned, or that they do not develop eating disorders. And eating disorders, though we do not see so often in India, but it is a burning problem in the other global countries globally. And therefore we definitely need to work with the child, and if required, with a psychologist. So psychological counseling is extremely important. And what really is most important with children is regular follow-up, constantly motivating them, asking them to check their weight and adherence to the meal plan. Encouraging healthy eating habits. I think this point needs to be really emphasized, that when we're looking at, it's not only the child, it's the entire family who should, adopt healthy eating practices. And it's not only the child who's obese. And therefore, it's very, very important that when we're planning a diet, it has to be customized to the family needs. One is definitely keeping the cultural preferences in mind, the economic status, how many members in the family, because sometimes it becomes very difficult for the woman of the house. They live in a large joint family, and it becomes very difficult for them to cook separately for the children. So it's extremely important to take a thorough dietary recall and understand their lifestyle so that we can personalize a plan for them. Comprehensive self-management education. I think very important is when we're talking about, also I think today technology is really helping us to assess the quantity of food that the children are eating. So one is, while we are looking at the quality of nutrients, we also need to keep in mind the quantity, the eating behavior and physical activity. And therefore reporting on a daily basis really helps us understand and then motivate this child to do better. We always start with plotting the growth chart. So it's very, very important that at every visit or every consultation that we have with the children is to plot the growth charts, to track the growth velocity, monitor progress at every follow-up. And very important is to look at adiposity rebound, that is increased BMI in less than 5 years, because that is going to basically predict the childhood obesity in adulthood. So this is extremely important, and we do it at every clinic visit. And working with a pediatric endocrinologist or with the pediatrician of this child becomes extremely important, because it could not only be nutritional, but it could be other factors that you need to keep in mind. It could be an endocrine, have an endocrine etiology, or it could be a genetic cause. In fact, we do get children with Prader-Willi syndrome. We do have children with growth hormone deficiency, severe hypothyroidism. In fact, hypothyroidism is also something that we are seeing very commonly today, especially when we're treating children with type 1 diabetes. And therefore, this also needs to be kept in mind. And therefore, working very closely with the pediatric endocrinologist becomes extremely important. And we actually do a case discussion with the referring doctor every time we manage a case, so that we are working as a team to help this child do better. Now, what are the goals of meal planning? Very important is, while we're looking at the calories, we have to ensure that we're giving adequate calories, because the children are in their growth and development phase. It has to be well balanced. So, dietary diversity, nutrient density is extremely important when we are planning diets, and therefore choosing foods from all the food groups, keeping in mind the macro as well as the micronutrients, become very essential. Carbohydrate control for sure in our country, because I think we all know, I think there's so many studies and surveys which have shown that we Indians are a carb-loving country. We eat around 65 to 70% of our calories coming from carbs. So therefore, we have to look at quantity, but more important is also quality of carbs, because when it comes to children, we see that the quality of carbs is definitely a big concern. Sometimes when we take recalls, from morning to evening, they're actually eating only outside food or packaged foods. And parents are giving in, because parents are also working. It is very, very difficult to sit and make separate food for the children. It has to be a nutrient-dense meal plan that promotes growth and development, prevention of any complications that are arising because of obesity. And we know that obesity is the root cause of all problems, whether it is hyperinsulinemia, prediabetes, diabetes, dyslipidemia, because this is something that we are seeing commonly in children today. Now, while we look at the RDAs, when we're looking at the NI and ICMR recommendations, let me tell you, it is very, very important that we understand what is the calorie consumption of the individual and then plan the diets. We don't really blindly follow this because sometimes the child, if we give them so many calories, the child will actually end up being more overweight. So therefore, it's very important to take a thorough dietary assessment, look at the nutrient quality, and then decide how much calories and carbs, protein, and fat that we will give this child. Now, when I'm looking at the guidelines for children, we follow the ISPAD guidelines, and the ISPAD guidelines clearly state that for children, we should look at giving them 40 to 50% of calories coming from carbohydrate. When it comes to sucrose, around 10% of calories coming from sucrose, not more than that. And we're definitely seeing an increase in consumption of sugar is because they're either eating, chocolates, or there's a lot of consumption of maybe, cakes, pastries, waffles, milkshakes, smoothies, and there's a lot of hidden sugar that they are consuming without even realizing. Now, when we are moderating carbs, like when we're looking at, reducing the carbs from say 65 to 70% of calories coming from carbs, and we want to meet the calorie requirements, the only nutrient which actually comes to our rescue is fat. And we have seen that, even increasing the fat in the diet in the form of good fats, that is MUFA fat. So I'm a huge promoter of nuts in children's diet because I see that really works well. It's very easy to carry and it's very easy for the child to consume it, especially in the morning when they really don't want to consume something very heavy. We can, nuts come to the rescue. So 30 to 40% of calories coming from fat, definitely low in saturated fats. As far as possible, avoid trans fats, but give good, omega-3 fats, your MUFA fats and PUFA. So this is where the fat comes from. We have to counsel the parents on the amount of oil that should be used in terms of visible fats. Now, protein. As per the ISPAD guidelines, they recommend around 15 to 25% of energy coming from protein. And protein is another nutrient which is always a challenge in our Indian population, and especially when it comes to children, because we see that morning is a high carb snack, mid-morning is, either a sandwich or it's biscuits or it's chips or some kind of, fried snack which is taken to school. Lunch is again either chapati bhaji or it could be a rice like a pulao or something like that which is in school. Evening again is either a packet of chips or a sandwich or biscuits, and dinner is snacks. In fact, we've seen with children that dinners are no longer meals. It's not like a full meal that children eat. And it's typically, they would eat a bruschetta for dinner, or they would eat burritos, or they'd eat a pizza, or they'd eat a burger, or sev puri, or pani puri. So this is the kind of dinners that are there, especially in the part of the country that I am from. And while we do not really discourage it, because children want variety, at the end of the day, we want them to follow eating at, home cooked foods. We have to make it very interesting and appealing for the child. And this is where I actually ask the parents to sit down with the children, possibly every weekend, and plan the menu with the child. You could even plan a cyclical menu. One is that, the child starts feeling very important that, the mother or the parent is really taking my likes and dislikes into consideration, as well as the child will then not refuse to eat. So I think that makes it very, very simple. The ingredients will be there in the house because you know what is going to be cooked in the week. You have your menu planned and it's extremely balanced. So one is definitely looking at that and also making sure that, it is more balanced. So you can still continue eating variety at dinner, but making sure that you get, we always tell them it's always nice to consult a qualified dietitian because then she will help plan the diet in such a way that nutrient quality, nutrient density, and diet diversity are kept in mind. When we're looking at carbohydrate recommendations, I think today everybody is scared of carbs. So when it comes to going on a diet, the first nutrient that they really look at is carbs. So yes, we know that we are eating a lot of carbs, but cutting out carbs completely is not the solution. So definitely the carbohydrate requirements will be, will be very individualized based on age, gender. We have children pursuing sports, so this activity, as well as previous intake. That is what the dietary recall that we get from the individual. So focus and emphasis should definitely be on high quality carbohydrates and to improve dietary quality. Now, when it comes to sweeteners, though we all, we saw that the SPAT guidelines have clearly said that 10% of calories come from sucrose. But if the parents want to, use stevia or sucralose or erythritol, these are approved for children. Emphasis should definitely be on fiber, because this is something which is, again, we see missing in our diets, especially in the children's diet, and therefore emphasis on dietary fiber should be laid. Now, this is what the SPAT guidelines clearly state, that we should not excessively restrict carbohydrates for children, because they can be nutritionally inadequate and can result in growth failure. Now, when we look at low carb diets or very low carb diets, and when we review evidence, we actually, literature, we see that we really do not have long-term studies. At the most, we would have studies, most of them are like less than 6 months, and some of them are 2 years. We really do not know what is the long-term impact on a completely carbohydrate restricted diet for children. And therefore, very clearly, the SPAN guidelines state that you should not go below 40% of energy coming from carbohydrate. And if the person chooses to do it, because we still have parents who insist, and it takes some time to convince them, it's very important that they work with a specialist team with careful monitoring, short term, and look at all the micronutrient deficiencies that could arise because of a carbohydrate restricted diet or a diet which eliminates a certain food group. I love the food plate because it's making life very simple for us to explain to our parents, and it's very practical. Instead of telling them don't eat this and don't eat that, because what we need to give them is what is sustainable, what they can do on the long run. I always tell people, do not follow anything which has an expiry date, and especially when it comes to children. We want them to enjoy eating. We do not want to bring the fear of food, because then we're going to give rise to other issues like eating disorders, etc. So I think it has to be a very gradual change. We have to work with the family, with the person who's cooking the food, make sure that there's a lot of color on the plate, there's more variety on the plate, and explain the healthy plate concept. I think this is something which is very well accepted by children as well as by their caregivers. So eat a rainbow, 5 a day, which is your vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, all your fresh seasonal fruits. And again, giving recipes to children, I think this makes it very interesting. In fact, we insist that the child is always there in the consultation, because they feel that, okay, now, our parents are consulting a dietitian, she's going to just eliminate all the foods. And, they feel very sad, and they feel that they're going to be deprived of all their favorite foods. And actually, the best joy that we get out of the consultation is to see the children smiling, that yes, they can eat their favorite foods. We just need to eat them in moderation, time it well, and focus should be definitely on improving the activity. When you look at, again, the guidelines, they definitely focus on a Mediterranean diet, the Nordic diet, and again, emphasis on plant-based diet. And I think this is what all guidelines today are emphasizing on, including the international guidelines, that try and eat more plant-based, not completely avoid non-veg, but yes, try and definitely include fresh, seasonal fruits and vegetables, because that will definitely help give the added fiber as well as the micronutrients and the antioxidants. Again, there's a lot of studies and a lot of literature today available, and we all know about the importance of gut health, and there is a role of pre and probiotics in obesity, and therefore we could explore the use of probiotics and prebiotics to modulate the gut microbiota to prevent obesity. This was from our study that we did, and we tried to understand the snacking patterns in adolescents. And what we saw was skipping meals and snacks has become very common, especially breakfast. People skip breakfast because that's a very easy meal to skip, and children just wake up right in time. They have to go to school. So there's very little time between waking up and leaving the house for school. Majority reported snacking to be more likely while watching television in the middle of the night. And this is something that we see in our clinical practice. The problem actually starts in the evening, either in the evening snacks and then definitely in the night, because they're sleeping late and then they're opening the fridge or the cupboards and eating unhealthy. Many perceive snacks, like I said, that we are definitely seeing meals being replaced by snacks today. high fat, sugar and salt foods and ultra processed foods are consumed more frequently. Packaged fruit juices, because they feel that, the fruit juice is really healthy, and then they will guzzle down, glasses of fruit juice because they feel that it's healthy. And we all know that, the amount of sugar, especially high fructose corn syrup, which is a major concern today, and we know it's linked to triglycerides as well as uric acid. And come summers, they will again have aerated drinks, and 500 ml of an aerated drink can easily give us 10 to 12 to 15 teaspoons of sugar, and we do not even realize the amount of sugar that we consume by just consuming a bottle of aerated juice. And again, what the study showed was that adolescents who snacked in between meals had significantly higher BMI and percentage body fat. Now, we try to understand what were the factors that are hindering the snacking habits. So one is definitely availability of healthy snacks. Anything that is healthy, genuinely healthy, is more expensive, and you don't get them in small portions. So again, I think emphasis should be on educating all our children on reading food labels. And we always tell parents that when you go to a supermarket, take out that extra time to read the food label and educate the children on how to read food labels. Because today, a lot of children are eating packaged fruits, and they should be able to understand and decode the food label to be able to make a wise, informed decision. Healthy snacks, more expensive. So I think this is something that we should really highlight. And we have a lot of nutrition entrepreneurs here who are into healthy snacking, and I think, making of healthy snacks. And I think that's a great advantage to our kids, because then it's very easy, because, parents not all the time can make snacks, especially when it's a working mother. It becomes a huge, huge challenge. So we definitely have to make their life more easy by suggesting options which could be easy and ready on the go. Physical activity, I think, again, this is an area of, of concern. So I see that, they're ready to cut down on the food, but they're not really ready to exercise. And the focus should be on improving the physical activity. And for that, parents, teachers, all of them have to become good role models. So definitely, I think even in school, there has to be a focus on physical activity. And what we're again seeing with children, which is something that I'm always concerned about, and I discuss this with parents, is even physical activity has become a class today. The children are hopping from one class to another, tennis class to badminton to this. It's not like just going down and playing. Sometimes you should just allow the children to have their me time and enjoy the physical activity that they choose to do. And it need not be, because today there's a huge peer pressure on classes. How many classes is your children going to? So I think focusing on, doing a moderate to vigorous exercise. And in fact, tell all the parents that instead of planning a weekend at a mall, why don't you plan a trek with your child? And there are so many places that you could go trekking with your child. And I think that is the best way of encouraging outdoor activity. It's great family bonding. And I think this is something that we should encourage our children to do, so that they can carry this forward to the next generation. I think that is what we all did with our parents. So definitely at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise is what not only the SPAT guidelines, but also the WHO guidelines suggest. This is again becoming a big, big concern. We're seeing a lot of girls with precocious puberty today. And this is again because of the endocrine disruptors, again, educating parents on, the use, or, on reducing the use of endocrine disruptors becomes extremely important. Chrononutrition, I think there's so much to this today. We're talking about eating on time, sleeping on time, and again, this is something that has really gone for a toss, especially I think in the last 2 years, it has only worsened the situation. So I think very important to have meals on time, have meals as a family on the dining table without the TV or any gadgets, and then focusing on food, mindful eating, and eating by the clock becomes extremely important. Again, when we're looking at nutrition, sometimes parents think that every 2 hours I should feed the child. Yes, you need to maybe feed the child, but do not put in too much of carbs at every meal. For example, breakfast and mid-morning can be, focus on protein, focus on fiber, focus, on healthy fats, rather than giving, something which is very simple in carbs, which is high in saturated fat, because that is only going to increase the amount of insulin and cause more fat deposition. So that is something that we need to educate our parents on, because they feel that eating every 2 to 3 hours is very important. While that is important, we also need to tell them what they need to eat in those mid-meal snack breaks. Now I'm going to just discuss a couple of cases, and we have so many cases of children, but I'm just going to discuss. This is a 16-year-old female, 170 centimeters, 94 kgs, and the mother came to me as a reference from another dietitian friend of mine. BMI is 32.5, obesity, insulin resistance, PCOS, and hyperinsulinemia, irregular periods, and she was on hormone therapy. Her doctor had asked her to lose weight. A nuclear family, mother is working, and physical activity was nil. Now we plotted her growth chart, and if you see the BMI is in the obese percentile and she's obese, her recall. Now this is what her recall was. In the morning it would be typically poha, upma, sometimes idli, dosa, two slices of bread or egg. Mid-morning would be a packet of chips or biscuits because she was at home alone. Lunch is typically, the regular lunch that was cooked at home. Evening would be black coffee again in the evening because the mother was at work. It would be either ordering a sandwich or eating a packet of biscuits, chuda or chips. Dinner would be rice because they're South Indians, with a cup of dal. And if hungry at night, she would sneak into, to the refrigerator and have chocolates. Very fond of eating Chinese and Lebanese food, and therefore eating out or ordering in at least every weekend. So it would be at least 2 to 3 meals that she would either order in or go out to eat. So if you see, it's high carb, low protein, low fiber intake, and also the quality of carbs, if you see, is really it has a high glycemic index and the quality of carbs is low. Now, when you looked at the macronutrient distribution, this is what she was consuming, and this is what we actually recommended. So we definitely reduced the calories, we increased the physical activity. Her mother actually got her a trainer, so she would work out on her own 4 days a week and 3 days with the trainer. And this was the carb, protein, and fats. We reduced the carb to 50%, protein was kept at 15%, and fats as 35% with healthy fats. Quality of nutrients, reduced calories, MUFA fat. So in the evening, when she was craving, in the night when she was craving for the chocolates, we asked her to have nuts. We improved the fiber. Physical activity was at least 60 minutes a day. She would either go cycling, she would be dancing, or work out with the trainer. Again, evening snack was a challenge, because the mother was not at home, and that was again becoming a challenge. So we tried to put her on a meal replacer in the evening. And if you look at the meal replacer, the composition, 3 scoops in 100 ml of water was providing around 100 calories, 9.6 grams of protein, 9 grams of carbs, and the meal replacer we chose did not have sugar, 1.5 grams of fiber, and 3.5 grams of fat. And what she actually told us that this kept her full till dinner time. So, the cravings reduced. She would have this and then, go for her activity and then come back, have her dinner. And in the night, she would have, almonds, walnuts, sometimes pistachios, and that would suffice. Now, this was last August, where her fasting serum insulin, if you see, was 56.7, 94 kilos. And on Jan 25th, 2022, her weight came down to 77.8. In fact, she looked fabulous. She even took a trip to Rajasthan, and, she sent us her pictures, and she was looking amazing. And she had so much of confidence suddenly. She started feeling really good because she could fit in clothes. She really wore shorts, and, she was feeling really good about herself. And self-esteem really went up. And if you looked at her insulin levels, though they're still not in the normal range, it's work in progress, but it came down considerably from 56.7 to 26.1. Periods were regularized, and the mother was extremely happy that the doctor stopped the medication and she was getting her regular periods. I think this was the biggest satisfaction. And I think for all of us, I think this is what keeps us going and keeps us driven, that we're able to help parents, transform their children's life and make them more healthy. So this was a very, very good case that we had. And again, I think it is the parents' involvement. It is, it's like, we can take the horse to the water, but the horse has to drink the water. So yes, this girl was extremely committed. She really wanted to do it. And the mother was extremely, extremely involved. I mean, she was amazing. And the kind of efforts that she put in spite of being a working mother, was tremendous. This is another case that I will discuss. This is a 15-year-old boy, 171.3 centimeters, weight 89.8, obese. Father was working abroad. Mother and aunt both are working in Mumbai, and he's alone at home. HbA1c 10%, and when they did their HbA1c, it was 10%, and he was referred to us by a pediatric endocrinologist, dyslipidemia, and I'm going to show you his reports. Screen time was 8 to 9 hours because of online classes, then tuitions, and then they all want me time. They don't want to go down. They just want that me time on their gadgets and play. So physical activity was nil. He was started on basal insulin, 8 units per day, and on metformin 500, one in the morning and one in the night. Again, eating often, we noticed that he was feeling very hungry is because of uncontrolled diabetes and also boredom. He was alone at home, because of the lockdown, not able to go out. Again, obese category. So when we plotted the growth chart, he was above the 97th percentile. So in the obese category, and this is what his report looked like. So HbA1c was 10.7, C-peptide was 5.01, total cholesterol 216, LDL was 147.5, HDL was 38.1, and triglycerides were 173. So if you see dyslipidemia, high C-peptide levels, closer to the upper limit, and cholesterol was also 216. HbA1c was 10.7. That's the reason he was put on insulin. And the doctor was following up with this case very closely, and we were working as a team because we really wanted him to go off insulin, because it becomes a very, very tight, challenge actually, that when we're trying to normalize blood glucose and try and achieve weight loss, it is a huge challenge, because the first thing that we have to work on is try and normalize the blood glucose levels, try and bring them into the target range. And while we're doing that, weight loss is a little bit of a challenge. And then once we're able to bring the blood glucose levels down, then we focus on really losing weight. This was his dietary recall. He's a Catholic boy. So morning was milk with a glass of milk with sugar, mayo sandwich or salami sandwich. Again, because his mother and aunt were at work, he would eat whatever was available in the house. And typically we've seen that, parents think that a rusk or a toast is very healthy. So in the morning, the breakfast or the mid-morning snack would be toast. So 5 to 6 rusk or 1 packet of biscuits. Lunch was rice, 2 cups with dal, vegetable. If the food was not tasty, he would order in food. Evening, when the mother and the aunt came back from work, is when they actually made a snack. It could be a poha or a sabudana khichdi, or it could be biscuits, and dinner would be chapati with vegetables, or it could be fried cutlets, or it could be fish fry, and again ordering in, it would be pizza or burgers. So this is what his dietary recall was. And we looked at the macronutrient distribution. Yes, the carbs were high, protein was on the lower side, because again, we did not see that they ate non-veg every day. Even though they were Catholics, it wasn't like non-vegetarian every meal or every day, because again, the parent, the aunt and the mother were working. So whatever they could manage to make is what they would make. And this is what we recommended. So definitely bringing down the carbs, improving the quality of carbs, improving the protein. So yes, the protein did come down as per the calories, but and the fat was 66 grams, in which definitely the visible fat was kept in check, and nuts and seeds and all the other things that were incorporated in the child's diet. Quality of nutrient, reduced calories, MUFA fats, high fiber, and physical activity, again, 60 minutes a day. So, because he actually enjoyed doing his physical activity afterwards. And he became extremely compliant because he realized that his sugars were high and he was extremely concerned. This is what his reports were on 29th of September 2021, and 28th of October 2021, he actually lost good amount of weight. So he lost good amount of weight. His HbA1c, we did not repeat. We wanted to wait for 3 months. This is as per the doctor's instructions. So the doctor wanted to wait for the HbA1c, but his glucose readings, because he would constantly monitor his glucose and share his logbook with us. So it was in the range of 80 to 120. C-peptide came down. Total cholesterol also, if you see, the lipids really improved. In fact, the LDL came down from 147.5 to 90, and the triglycerides also came down to 99. And the best part was that insulin was stopped. So the mother was so relieved and happy. Metformin continued, but insulin was stopped. We're still following up with this child. So the take-home message is definitely it requires a multidisciplinary, multi-phase approach, and each child is unique. We definitely have to work with the treating physician to be One is to get the right, what you say, the brief in terms of, what is their assessment of this child, what is their, what is their target for this child, and work closely with them. So we definitely have a feedback mechanism that we have with all our doctors whom we work with, especially when it comes to children, regular follow-up and motivation. I think that is what is key. And we are in touch with our children on a regular basis, and we insist on keeping the children, involved, and the children actually report to us so that they are very, very, involved in the entire journey. Gradual, not drastic. We really don't aim at very, very drastic weight loss. And most important is sustainable. And again, when parents come and ask us, how much you think my child will lose in a month? We do not give them a number because honestly, we do not know. I think each individual is very, very different. And sometimes they feel very demotivated. And I think when it comes to children, and I'm sure Salome ma'am is here and she'll agree with me that when it comes to children, we actually want them to adjust their weight into their height. So height, the growth becomes extremely important. And we always tell them to focus on how they're feeling, the inch loss, acanthus is gone, the insulin levels improved, and all the other, deranged parameters coming into the range. Focus should be definitely on portion controlled, and therefore we have to make sure that the foods are healthy, very important, tasty, and visually appealing, especially when it comes to kids. So we actually focus a lot on making the foods visually appealing. Nutrient density and diet diversity is key, and working with the family, especially if they have their uncles, aunts, grandparents. I think sometimes with grandparents, it always becomes a challenge, but I think it's very important to talk them out and tell them that what kind of a risk it is for this child to be obese, because I think grandparents can never say that their children are obese. They always want to feed them, and that becomes a huge challenge. And the mother is facing a problem because she can't really tell the mother-in-law or do anything. And when she's not there, then, the children take advantage of the situation. Physical activity, 60 minutes a day, and very important is to emphasize on, food grown in plants and not manufactured. Food grown on plants and not manufactured in plants. So thank you so much.